Limited Magic is about fundamentals: curve, combat, removal. And then there are bombs. Cards so powerful that when they hit the battlefield, the entire game changes. Attacks stop, removal gets reprioritized, and if your opponent doesn't have an answer immediately, the game ends shortly after. Lorwyn Eclipsed is a synergy-heavy set, but today we're talking about the cards that don't need synergy. The cards you first pick, the cards you splash for, and the cards you lose to. These are the top 10 limited bombs in Lorwyn Eclipsed. Let's get into it. Starting us off at number 10 is a card that hits your opponents hard if not answered immediately. Let's check out Spinerock Tyrant. For 2 red and 3 generic, you get a massive 6/6 dragon that reads Flying, Wither. This deals damage to creatures in the form of -1/-1 counters. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell with a single target, you may copy it. If you do, those spells gain Wither. You may choose new targets for the copy. In Limited, big flying threats are already a premium, and Spinerock Tyrant is exactly that. It closes games in just a few combat steps and immediately forces your opponents into a desperate race or a removal check. If this hits the battlefield and survives for a turn, your opponent is officially on a clock. At number 9 is a card that doesn't look like a bomb at first glance until you realize this thing could hit the battlefield as early as turn 4. At number 9, we have Sapling Nursery. Let's check it out. For 2 green and 6 generic, you get an enchantment that reads Affinity for Forests. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each forest you control. Landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, create a 3/4 green tree folk creature token with reach. Pay 1 and a green, exile this enchantment. Tree folk and forests you control gain indestructible until end of turn. This card turns time into board presence. Every turn it survives, you get further ahead. More bodies, more blockers, more inevitability. In Limited, unanswered engines like this are terrifying. Sapling Nursery doesn't win instantly, but it does make sure your opponents never catch up. Coming in at number 8 is a card that completely flips the script on attrition-based board games. Let's check out Bloodline Bidding. For 2 black and 6 generic, you get a sorcery that reads Convoke. Your creatures can help cast this spell. Each creature you tap while casting the spell pays for 1 generic or 1 mana of that creature's color. Choose a creature type. Return all creature cards of the chosen type from your graveyard to the battlefield. Limited games are full of trades, removal, and stalled boards, and Bloodline Bidding punishes all of that. 1 spell can suddenly refill your board, undo multiple terms of interaction, and overwhelm your opponent instantly. If this resolves with even a modest graveyard, the game is usually over. Number 7 is a card that asks a simple question in Limited. Can you answer this right now? Let's check out Ajani, Outland Chaperone. For 2 white and 1 generic, you get a legendary Planeswalker that reads +1, create a 1/1 green and white Kithicin creature token. -2, Ajani deals 4 damage to target tapped creature. -8, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is your life total. You may put any number of non-land permanent cards with mana value 3 or less from among them onto the battlefield. Then shuffle. Planeswalkers are already a premium in Limited, and Ajani is no exception. He's cheap at only 3 mana, stabilizes the board, generates value turn after turn, and forces your opponents to overextend just to keep up. If Ajani sticks around for more than a turn cycle, he can take over the game. Now we're getting into truly oppressive bombs. At number 6, we have a card that may make your opponent scoop when you cast it. Let's check out Soul Immolation. For 2 red and 3 generic, you get a sorcery that reads, as an additional cost to cast this spell, Blight X. X can't be greater than the greatest toughness among creatures you control. Soul Immolation deals X damage to each opponent and each creature they control. This card is a one-sided board wipe. This is the kind of card that can bring you back from a game you felt you were sure to lose. The best limited bombs are the cards that bring you back when you're behind, and Soul Immolation is exactly that. At number 5 is a creature that's excellent at every stage of the game. Let's check out Figure of Fable. For a single hybrid green and white mana, you get a 1/1 Kithicin that reads, pay hybrid green-white. This creature becomes a Kithicin Scout with base power and toughness 2/3. 1 and 2 hybrid green-white. If this creature is a Scout, it becomes a Kithicin Soldier with base power and toughness 4/5. 3 generic, 3 hybrid green-white. If this creature is a Soldier, it becomes a Kithicin Avatar with base power and toughness 7/8 and protection from each of your opponents. Early game, it blocks profitably. Mid game, it dominates combat. Late game, it becomes a finisher that is almost impossible to deal with. This card scales beautifully and forces your opponents to have an answer or lose. This is the definition of a limited must-kill creature. At number 4, we have Irdu, Carrier of Dawn. For 2 white and 3 generic, you get a 5/5 legendary elemental god that reads Flying, Lifelink, creature spells you cast have Convoke. Your creatures can help cast those spells. Each creature you tap while casting a creature spell pays for 1 generic or 1 mana of that creature's color. At the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay black. If you do, transform Irdu. When transformed, Irdu reads Flying, Lifelink, each other non-token creature you control has Persist. When it dies, if it had no -1/-1 counters on it, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a -1/-1 counter on it. At the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay white. If you do, transform. Irdu stabilizes the board the moment it resolves, and it slowly takes over through sheer inevitability. Whether it's life gain, board control, or raw stats, this card shuts the door on aggressive strategies. Once Irdu is in play, your opponent is on borrowed time. And now we're in the top 3, and this is where games end immediately. Up next is a card that punishes opponents for ever tapping out. Let's check out Aurora Awakener. For 1 green and 6 generic, you get a 7/7 giant druid that reads Trample, Vivid. When this creature enters, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal X permanent cards, where X is the number of colors among permanents you control. Put any number of those permanent cards onto the battlefield, then put the rest of the revealed cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. Aurora Awakener creates massive tempo swings. 1 minute you're behind on board, the next you put 3 or more permanents into play. This card turns one moment into the moment. Up next is a card that fundamentally changes how combat works. At number 2, we have Kin Binding. Let's check it out. For 2 white and 3 generic, you get an enchantment that reads, creatures you control get +X/+X, where X is the number of creatures that entered the battlefield under your control this turn. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 1/1 green and white Kithkin creature token. Since this makes a token every combat, your entire battlefield is getting at least a +1/+1 stat boost. But some turns you'll play a creature or 2 before combat, pumping up this boost to your team. If this sticks, your opponent is not going to last long. And finally, number 1. This is the card you first pick without hesitation. The card that makes your opponent sigh when it resolves. At number 1, we have Chronicle of Victory. Let's check it out. For 6 generic mana, you get a legendary artifact that reads, as Chronicle of Victory enters, choose a creature type. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +2/+2 and have first strike and trample. Whenever you cast a spell of the chosen type, draw a card. Chronicle of Victory is absurd and limited. It's colorless, it pumps your team, grants powerful combat keywords, and turns every future creature spell into card advantage. There is no racing this card. There is no stabilizing against it. If Chronicle of Victory resolves and survives for a turn, the game is over. Chronicle of Victory is the best limited bomb in Lorwyn Eclipsed. Lorwyn Eclipsed is a synergy-rich limited format, but these cards rise above synergy. They dominate boards, they demand answers, and they decide games on their own. Let me know in the comments which bomb you're hoping to open, and which one you're terrified to face. If you enjoyed this list, make sure to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.